Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's now time for the big final award. And we are in election season, so I think it should be reasonably simple to guess who our Indian of the year is. Remember, this was the year, as we just saw on stage, that the selfie became, well, the coolest thing you could do. But what was the uncoolest thing you could do? To not vote. We've gone from a people who used to sit in our drawing rooms and judge everybody, but never bother to get up and go out and vote, to people who are now shamed, named and shamed, when we don't vote. And the selfie of the ink-stained finger, I have to say, is cooler than even the Oscars Ellen selfie. And for that, we have only one institution to thank. It began in the 1990s when T.N. Seshan first took control of the Election Commission. And he used to be called, and by the way, he didn't mind the description, Alsatian, for the watchdog role that he played. Since then, the Election Commission has been not just the watchdog, but the conscience keeper of this country. And the fact that the world's largest democracy is able to function with some method to our madness, that credit must go to the Election Commission. So may I invite the men who are representing the Indian of the Year this evening, one by one, all extraordinary, have actually delivered freer and fairer elections in some of the toughest, most conflict-ridden parts of the country. Our vote should never be taken for granted. And for that tonight, we salute the Election Commission. May I call first Mr. Lyngdoh on stage. Please join us. It's in no particular order. I'm just calling you as I see you. Mr. Lyngdoh, please. Please. Mr. M.S. Gill. Gill Saab, please come, sir. Anywhere. Anywhere. Mr. Krishnamurthy, please, if you could join us. Free seating, please. Mr. Krishnamurthy. Mr. B.B. Tandon. Qureshi Saab. Naveen Chawla. Mr. Gopalaswamy, please. And before I begin, I think we must have a big round of applause for these men sitting on stage. I would also like to say that the current election commissioners, the chief election commissioner sent a message, and he said that since we're cracking the whip on politicians and we have certain rules, we too have to follow those rules. And while we would have loved to accept this award, till elections are over, we cannot be part of this. So they're following the rules, but are our politicians following the rules? Well, that's an open question. Let me start by getting a few comments from these very distinguished gentlemen on stage. Mr. Gill, I'd like to start with you. Do you believe that the Election Commission has the powers it needs? Because a lot of times what people see is that there's a reprimand from the EC, there's a temporary ban, there's a notice, and then they either write a letter saying sorry, or they don't even do that. Sometimes they're absolutely brazen, as we've seen in this election. And life just carries on till the next election. So is there a sense of exasperation and frustration that, you know, we can't really punish these guys?
No, I personally have always believed, when I was in the job and ever since, that frankly the 4 sections, 324 to 327 or something, in the original Ambedkar-Nehru Constitution, give all the powers to the Commission if a Commission has the capacity and the knowledge how to use them. You can read all that you need to do into them. I think in this country, if anything, we over-regulate and make too many laws and we bind ourselves. No, I think those 4 sections are flexible enough to accommodate a session, me, all my colleagues here, all of them, and each have played or batted in their own way. And we get on. I think I don't miss anything.
Okay. Mr. Krishnamurthy, would you agree? Because, you know, when we're right in the middle of election season, and I have to say that some are describing this to be the ugliest campaign that we've seen. We've seen hate speeches galore. We've seen polarization on religious, using religion. And we've then seen most of these politicians either be brazen about their rhetoric or simply make a token kind of clarification and you know, then they're back in the field?
Well, with due respect to Dr. Gill, I have to slightly differ from him because most of our constitution provisions are drafted having in mind decent politicians.
And that's not quite the case today, is it?
Over the years, it has changed.
That's being
And
polite
I
and diplomatic.
I strongly believe some changes are required to tackle these bitter personal attacks, very
Yes.
abusive language. I think I personally feel the model code of conduct needs to be given a little more teeth, in the sense, like the football game, you introduce a yellow card, red card, and so on, to see that if they misbehave more than once, they need to be disqualified.
So like two yellow cards and you're out of the game. Something like that. It'd be curious to hear from our politicians here whether they'd ever accept something like that. But Mr. Gopalaswamy, what's been your experience? What's the toughest thing being an election commissioner? You know, there are all kinds of allegations also and controversies also that you have to deal with. For example, one or the other party will sometimes say, oh, this election commissioner is biased. This election commissioner has a particular political leaning. So how do you arbitrate or adjudicate in such a way that nobody can ever accuse an election commission or an election commission of the whiff of political bias?
I don't think, you see, the allegations which are made during the election time are more for public consumption. I don't think the politician really feels that the election commission is biased, but they have to say something at the time of elections, and you know, when they trade abuses with, or when they trade remarks with one another, some point of time they need a diversion. You know, then the election commission also becomes one of the parties.
Just one of the punching bags to divert from what they're saying.
So I don't think they really.
What's been the toughest thing, your toughest experience for you as EC?
Well, you know, at one point of time, just the night before election one state, the chief minister rang me up and said, we don't have the cards, so will you allow voting without the identity card? I said, no, it's not possible. Then he said, I don't have a card. I said, fine, I mean, you should have told us before. But still, this is about 10:40 at night. 2:30 in the morning, we delivered a card to his residence. He used the card and went and voted, but his wife forgot her card. She was prevented from voting.
And the rule must apply as
Obvious.
it's meant to. Mr. Lyngdoh, you know, I remember the 2002 elections in Jammu and Kashmir, and they were really considered watershed because till that time there used to be a continuing debate in Kashmir about the fairness of elections. That was an election I remember you oversaw. Conflict zones, elections in conflict zones, is it a completely different ballgame, one that we sitting here in Delhi, just, you know, we don't even begin to understand? So when you were overseeing the Kashmir election, for example, or the Kashmir election, talk a little bit about the challenges of an election in a conflict-ridden area like the Kashmir Valley.
Well, it was good fun, actually. I mean, that compensates.
But what was the most difficult thing that you had to take care of when you were overseeing?
Well, the most difficult was actually spiking the ex-militants.
Yes.
Because the ex-militants were not allowing the opposition candidates to campaign.
And do you believe that the Election Commission needs more powers, because there seems to be a slight disagreement among the other members here? Do you believe that in some ways it hasn't been able to do all that it should have?
It's becoming a very serious sort of discussion. Could I be slightly more facetious?
Please.
You see, I was wondering today, I mean, I was wondering, because, you know, the Session he doesn't go anywhere now.
Yes, TN Session.
So he was obviously a missing tooth in today's program.
Yes.
And I was wondering to myself, should I go or shouldn't I go? I didn't want to be the second missing tooth. But then I was wondering what happened to the grinders? And the present election commission are not there, so the grinders are missing. But you explain, because they don't want to come because they don't feel that they ought to come at this stage.
Hmm.
And they really go up in my estimation.
So when you say the grinders are missing, elaborate on that.
And
When you say the grinders are missing,
well, they are the grinders because they're the present lot.
yes.
We're all oldsters. I
Well, the
mean,
grinders have a job to do at the moment, so.
the discarded teeth, I mean, you might say. I mean,
Mr. Chawla, I don't know if Mr. Lyngdoh is being facetious or a bit cynical. Do you feel that cynical? Is it like we're seeing the wisdom teeth here that have all fallen off? Since we're all on grinders and molars and teeth and toothless. Mr. Chawla?
I won't answer that directly, but I will say this in continuation of something that Mr. Lyngdoh said, which is that we are this evening greatly missing Mr. Seshan.
Yes.
And when I go to Chennai, I have to tell you that even now I sit at the edge of my chair like a joint secretary, and the lessons that he would tell me during the tough 2009 general election was that, have you looked at my skin? And I would say, you know, I didn't know what to say. He would say that this is the skin of a rhinoceros. And if you have to do Indian elections well, you've got to get my kind of skin.
So here's my question. Who needs a tougher skin? The Neta or the Election Commission?
The Neta, I mean, the Election Commission is very tough. Make no mistake of that. Ask the Netas.
I'm going to do that in just a moment.
Yes, there's no doubt about that.
I'm going to do that in just a moment. But you wanted to add a point, Mr. Lyngdoh, and then, yes.
you asked me a question.
Yes.
I have no objection to people abusing each other,
Yes.
especially when it's good fun. I mean, it's like Holi or something. It's all right. But if you keep on doing violence
Yes.
to the integrity of this country, and you know, after all, the country today is a gift of chance colonial rule.
Yes.
All of us together. I mean, so many different people together.
Yes.
And we wouldn't have been together but for that colonial rule. When that rule ceased, it automatically became a difficult position for all of us to remain, to keep on being together. And it's a strain on the country, and you can see how many troops are used in various places just to keep us together.
Yeah.
And so many people die on both sides. And here, when you have an election, these people cheerfully come along and they start abusing not only each other, abusing each other's religions, abusing all kinds of things, which, you know, sort of do serious damage to the unity of this country.
I think that's...
And I take that very seriously. And I think it's come to a stage where the Election Commission has to use its plenary powers under 324 article to get rid of people like that.
Those are very strong. Those are very strong words, and I'm actually glad you've made the point that, you know, when people seek to divide people of this country on the basis of religion, they deserve much more than an Election Commission notice. Mr. Tandon, Mr. Qureshi, let me get you in on that. Mr. Tandon?
No, I would like to say that, you know, there is no more powers are not required for the Election Commission. What is required is you see, responsible behavior from the candidates and the political
But
party.
that clearly doesn't happen.
Political party.
And what Mr. Lyngdoh is saying is that
what it should happen, you know, because, you know, a model code of conduct has evolved out of a consensus amongst the major political parties that they will abide by this code.
But do you think
so
the EC is tough enough?
It is expected that they should abide by it.
Do you think the
And
EC is tough enough, sir?
When the Election Commission gives a warning to a candidate or a censure, that's a big thing. It carries a message.
Let me get Qureshi Sahab on that. Does it carry a message? Is that censure a big thing?
I think so. I think so because you know, people underestimate the value of model code. You know, we use every other law which is available to us anyway. IPC or the Representation of People Act. Model code is on top of that. And when we give a notice that you violated such and such thing and please reply by 5 p.m. tomorrow, by 4 p.m. the answer comes. And the fact that the notice is issued, it hits the headline. The fact that somebody was taken to task, it keeps in the news, and I think it has a very powerful impact.
Is this the ugliest election campaign you've seen in a while?
I think I'm a little bit disappointed that this is crossing the limit a little. Although you would still notice that hate speech, rebel rousing has been confined to just 1 or 2 cases. If you see the scale of the election, it's the biggest human event of the world, and looking at that, if you can count on these violations on your fingers, I wish they were not happening. But my request will be, my appeal will be to the top leadership of every political party to also enforce some discipline, not forcing the election commission to come with a heavy hand.
I think before I call Pranoy on stage to give away the award, Salman Khurshid, if you would respond to that politicians have to, in a sense, lead by example, that this isn't a school where the principals are going to tick off the erring students and then have you fall in line. What we're seeing, as Mr. Lyngdoh said, is really the kind of language we've seen in this election from all parties is actually dismaying. If we can get Mr. Khurshid the mic, I think we just... You can take mine.
Well, thank you very much. I will say 2 things. One, as Mr. Qureshi is sitting here, there's a life beyond elections. We are friends. We disagreed, and we are friends, and I respect the Election Commission for timely telling us that you are stepping out of what you should be doing. But having said that, let me just say one thing. There is a huge disagreement in this country about various issues. The Supreme Court, in a judgment, said Hindutva is permissible. The word Hindutva, and with Hindutva, is permissible in an election campaign. Now, when some people say that Hindutva is permissible, and the court says that, some people disagree with it. Now, Election Commission's biggest problem today is summary judgment on issues on which there is a huge disagreement in the country. And the apostles, 7 here, 9 together, are wonderful people. I don't think that there is a better institution that can look after elections. But I think the Election Commission has to keep in mind that they are the only commission in this country that doesn't have an appellate commission above them. There is no appeal. Summary judgment can destroy a politician overnight. But they do a good job most of the time. Once in a while they get it wrong, but so do we all. Thank you.
I don't think that's quite correct. You can go to the High Court. If there is a wrong judgment, it can always go to the High Court.
Well, I think most of us, Mr. Khurshid, would actually want the Election Commission to be tougher rather than softer. Amir, you have a question? Yes, let me just get you the mic.
Thanks. You know, my question is to all of you. Is it possible to not have this first past the post system? Has the Election Commission thought of that? And instead, remove this first past the post.
You should ask this question to Mr. Khurshid.
And instead, have like at least 51, you need majority votes to, Has this been discussed in what detail, Mr. Qureshi, anyone?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Yes, it is possible to change the first past the post, because today, I won't name states, but my friend Salman knows, 40% or 45% will be the polling. Out of that, one party gets 18, others get 15, 12, and 10, and 18 has got a mandate. And later they misguide the country and the state by saying we have a massive mandate. There is a flaw.
Okay.
Now, I believe that the biggest thing we introduced in '98, and my colleagues are sitting here, is the electronic voting.
Yes.
I said then as CEC again and again that it is possible to do what France does in this country now, which is we have day one of polling, there are 5-7 candidates, but nobody like Afghanistan gets 50+1.
Yeah.
So we'll take the top 2 and have a re-poll 5 days later.
Yeah.
I can do it with my electronic machine.
Okay.
But nobody wants to do it, because if you have that system, then the communal politics of India will disappear.
Well,
Why?
I think...
Why? Just a second.
Sorry, sir.
Why? Because in any constituency, you say Muslims are 30% here or 6 or 20 here, and therefore you need this and that, that will disappear in any constituency of India, then you will need to carry everybody, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, whatever.
Okay,
That's,
the debate.
that's precisely why
Yes.
this is such a very important point, and that's precisely why this is such a very important point, and we are really hoping that, you know, the politicians together with the Election Commission work towards, you know, Parliament. Yeah, we should.
Okay, so back with Parliament,
Sir,
I would like to now call.
Can I ask a question to you then? Why doesn't
Just-
Parliament pass this? It will unite the country. It will be inclusive politics.
Political parties, including mine, had ruled with minority vote. Now that we are in the area of coalitions, I think we should seriously look at this. But there are, again, like everything else in our country, difference of opinion on this. But I think this is a wonderful idea. I think we should pursue it. This is something that really is the idea of the future. So anyone who pushes it, please give him the Indian of the Year
Well,
award
at the
next
moment,
year.
we still have to award the Indian of the Year to these gentlemen here. So, Pranoy, if you could please come on stage. The Indian of the Year, the Election Commission. And a big round of applause for the Election Commission, please.